I'm sure there's more to decipher. I'm sure a cardiologist will pop up in the comment section and starts talking about the actual shape and the actual state of health of Bryan Johnson's heart. He has a big heart, though, because he's documenting everything for free for our enjoyment. So more points for Bryan. Vigorous Steve here. In this video, I want to review Bryan Johnson's The Blueprint. No, not that Bryan Johnson. I wouldn't believe a word that is coming out of his mouth nowadays, not back then and not nowadays, certainly not nowadays. I'm talking about Bryan Johnson with a Y, a retired entrepreneur who sold his company for $800 million, probably had a little bit of a vacation, maybe a little bit too exclusive. And then after that, the last couple of years, he's been actively trying to reverse the biological clock and reduce his chronological age. I found it highly fascinating to see an entrepreneur, such a rich guy, to kind of document everything online in the blueprint, whether that's his organ imaging or his blood work or his supplementation protocol, his actual diet, his training strategy, basically everything. He's documenting it all online for the world to see. And I've been doing exactly the same thing for the last couple of years here on this YouTube channel. So I feel like I'm a perfect fit, a perfect match to actually review this, because there's not so many guys out there nowadays who are this transparent like Bryan Johnson or Brent Greenfield or myself. So in this video, I want to review the blueprints. But before we do, please like the video, leave a comment for the algorithm, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by joining either the Patreon or YouTube memberships, where you can vote for upcoming deep dives or join the weekly Vigorous Q&A, which is always on Saturday. Let's get started by explaining who Bryan Johnson with a Y, right? I have to emphasize that every single time, who Bryan Johnson with a Y actually is. He founded Braintree in 2007, then acquired Venmo, which I'm sure all of you Americans are very familiar with. He acquired Venmo in 2012 for $26.2 million. And then within 1 year, he sold Braintree Venmo for $800. That's 30x. I mean, sweet, absolutely sweet. 30x the value of what he just invested in Venmo. He sold the Braintree and Venmo to PayPal. So all of you guys that are familiar with PayPal and Venmo, Bryan Johnson is one of the founding fathers basically behind that entire infrastructure. And for the guys who are familiar with e-commerce websites, Braintree, I think, still offers several different solutions. So ever since then, he probably had a little bit of a down period, maybe let himself go based on the pictures that he posted of that time. And of course, he was a high value, but also a very busy entrepreneur. And, you know, based on what I'm going through right now, the more entrepreneurial mindset you have, the more your physical shape starts to deteriorate, unfortunately. So right now he's 45 years old. His birthday is August 22nd, 1977. So he's going to turn 46 years old reasonably soon. He's only 5'6" years older than I am, but he looks a lot younger. So kudos on you, Bryan. You look great. Right? He's got a great body. He's very physically active. And all of the money that he made selling his company, he's now kind of reinvesting into his own health. He's documenting everything online. So let's just get started with the blueprint, because again, I feel it's very fascinating. Let's start by subscribing to his waiting list, vigorous.steve@gmail.com. Subscribe. Let's see. Thank you. Let's go back to the website. I'll link his website down below. And if you want to know more about Bryan Johnson, his Wikipedia page, which tells a very interesting story, is down below as well. So the blueprint here is highlights. Be the next evolution of human. Build your autonomous self. You can join his waiting list, where he's probably going to, have a little bit of an update on how the blueprint is continuously evolving. Here you see, 2 years and millions were spent developing Blueprint, an algorithm that takes better care of me than I can myself. Now, you can build your autonomous self as well. So for the guys that are reasonably new to this anti-aging and age reversal space, this is a very good source of information for you guys. But for me, I've been kind of on this journey of self-betterment and self-improvement and keeping myself as healthy as possible since I was 15 years old. And I will be the first to say that bodybuilding and longevity don't exactly match, especially the performance-enhancing drugs involved with bodybuilding, kind of deleterious for your health. So in the last couple of years, I've been doing my due diligence, kind of reversing the clock, or at least try to undo some of the damage that I might have done following my bodybuilding aspirations. And even though I'm having a hard time giving up this bodybuilding endeavor, as I get older, I realize that the extreme side of bodybuilding is probably not very sustainable now that I'm 40 years old myself, or turning 40 later this year. So here is his results of Bryan Johnson. My results from 2 years following the blueprint. I'm sure he had a couple different iterations along the way. So this is the most recent update. He slowed the pace of aging by an equivalent of 31 years. So basically he reversed the clock of his biological age from 45 years old to, 14, 15 years old. I found that it's highly commendable. He probably means something else with that. I'm sure his body is not exactly representative of a 15-year-old, even though his skin certainly looks like a 15-year-old. I would say that. Now, he's aging slower than the average 10-year-old. Not exactly sure if that's true because, again, adolescents, teenagers, they grow quite fast because they're slowly undergoing puberty and they need to increase in height. So I'm not exactly sure how that's measured, but it's still interesting to note. Body inflammation is 66% below the average 10-year-old. You can see that from his high sensitivity C-reactive protein, his homocysteine levels, his neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, and a couple other different markers, which I think he's documenting online. His VO2 max is 60 milliliters per kilogram per minute, the top 1.5% of an average 18-year-old. So is he kicking the ass of all of his sons, or is he going to high schools and kicking the ass of all of the 18-year-old students there who are playing track and field and that kind of stuff? Not exactly sure, but it's still based on his physical shape. I would say it's very commendable, probably better than my VO2 max. Here it says perfect liver fat levels, iron stores, and stiffness determined with an MRI. So I would like to see a fibro scan for that. An MRI is a little bit different imaging compared to a fibro scan where you can actually get a CAP score and a fibrosis score. I've done my fair share of fibro scans over the years because I had my bout with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease a couple of years ago, where the fibrosis was not that high, but the fat within my liver was certainly elevated. And then after a trajectory of, let's say, 8 months, 9 months, trying to actively resolve that with various practices, again, it's all documented here on YouTube, my CAP score and fibrosis score was so low that I had to test that 10 times because it was certainly a lot lower than, the average age of 38 years old I was at that time. It was lower than a child's CAP score and fibrosis score. So he's proving that his liver health can be reversed to phenomenal levels. And I proved that a couple of years ago. So again, guys, if you want to do an MRI or fibro scan in your liver to actively reverse the aging and resolve non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or fibrotic tissue within the liver, you certainly can. Here it says that Bryan has ideal whole body muscle and fat mass or distribution determined with an MRI. Certainly based on his shape, I would say that's the case for overall anti-aging purposes. Maybe not so much for bodybuilding or fitness aspirations, but he certainly looks great. Much better than most 45-year-olds out there. 50 optimal clinical outcome biomarkers and 100 markers below his chronological age. That's very commendable. So it shows that with all of the extensive blood work that he's done, that most of his markers, again, 100 plus is a lot, right? That's pages upon pages of blood work results, that most of them are below his chronological age. So his actual biological age based on these markers is significantly lower. He has perfect liver markers. His ALT, AST, and gamma GT, only 49 IUs or units per liter. Very, very good. I remember that my ALT, AST, and gamma GT levels were very, very low after fixing my non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It was probably around 60, 65 with an ALT, let's say 15 to 20, AST similar, and a gamma GT around 10 to 12. So again, this is very, very good. Now, I will say that he's very physically active, right? He does calisthenics, he has a home gym. So his ALT and AST levels could actually be lower if he limits the resistance training and the calisthenics, because these aminotransferases, these transaminases, can also be artificially inflated by having muscle mass and training for hypertrophy. So maybe you could get it even lower by just taking a week off, or maybe you took a week off before taking these markers, and then it's not exactly an accurate representation of where his liver enzymes and gamma GT levels are for the majority of the year. Leg press. Now, I don't think that's an accurate way to test your strength. Right? We do a squat for that, but still 800 pounds is a hefty leg press. I would say that this bench press is very respectable, 240 pounds, a single rep. Again, how that compares to most 18-year-olds nowadays, not exactly sure, but a lot of 18-year-olds out there are super, super strong. And it took me a couple of years before I was able to bench press 225 pounds. I was not 18 years old, that's for sure. So as a true test of strength, I would like to see from Bryan Johnson another bench press, a squat, a deadlift, maybe a couple pull-ups, let's say 10 to 12 reps or 15 reps if he's capable. Anything over 12 reps is already respectable, and an overhead press. I think these 5 exercises show a true test of strength. His average heart rate variability showed a 12-year age reversal in 500 days following the practices of the blueprint, and there's a 31-year age reversal in gray hairs. That's a reduction of 80%. Now, I'm going to mention here, is he using GHK copper or just copper supplements? Not exactly sure, but let's be honest, Bryan Johnson was not in a perfect state of health before he started this journey, so the reversal is going to be a lot more significant compared to people who spent a lifetime investing into their health. So if you were like me, for example, where you're starting looking into your nutrition when you're 15 years old and you're going to the gym, you're physically active, you're doing daily fasted cardio and your blood work every year. Yes, I've been doing my blood work since I was about 15, 16 years old every single year. Then the reversal of these kind of biomarkers are not that dramatic. But again, he comes from a entrepreneurial background, probably didn't take good care of himself, judging by the before and after pictures. And he was not in very good physical shape back when he sold his company and maybe a couple of years afterwards. His reversal are literally based on the last 2 years. So from 43 years old to 45 years old, still in as little as 2 years, very dramatic changes. And now he's in the 99th percentile of sleep performance of the Whoop users his age. I'm not exactly sure what Whoop is, but it's probably an application to track your sleep quality. He identified and corrected without surgery a ticking time bomb, which is a bilateral jugular vein stenosis. So that's stenosis within the veins right here. Certainly not as complicated as having your coronary artery full with plaque buildup, but still, if you do that without surgery, that means he was very heavy on the vitamin K, perhaps the seropeptase, or some of the other enzymes which are known to break up stenosis and plaque buildup. So that's very commendable, right? Bryan, good job. Because again, stenosis of the arteries, that's some serious and that's what a lot of bodybuilders are also suffering from. Luckily, not me, at least not in the coronary artery or any of the arteries within my heart, as proven by a CT scan with contrast. My CAC score, 0. Brain white matter hyperintensity is reduced by 50% determined with an MRI. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it's reduced by 50%, so sweet, good on you. 30 plus organs aged quantified, so he did organ imaging on all of his organs. He knows the exact chronological age and then can compare that with the biological age of each organ and hopefully reverses that over time. And his free testosterone index, biological age reduced by 20 years old. Now, I'm assuming based on his physical appearance a couple of years ago, that his free testosterone, total testosterone, bioavailable testosterone, SHBG, its entire hormone panel was probably completely out of whack. I do read that he's on some sort of testosterone patches, which we're going to discuss a little bit later. And then again, if you start from 0, a horrible, unhealthy state, after all of this entrepreneurial work, and you start actively resolving these issues, then yes, your testosterone levels will certainly improve, which I've, documented and talked about many, many times. So this guy, instead of buying the sports car, he actually got himself healthy and thus improved his overall testosterone levels. And here it says that he's the most measured man in human history, a quote from Vice. Now, I'm sure there's some guys out there who are going to contest this. The guys who use penis pumps every single day, they measure their junk before and they measure their junk afterwards. And if you use a penis pump for over a decade, then those guys are probably more measured than Bryan Johnson, but that's only on a single organ. So I would say that Bryan Johnson has the lead on all of those guys. Look at this guy. Absolutely phenomenal shape. I'm not exactly sure what he's wearing. On his head, it's probably a device to measure his brain activity. It's not one of those new iPhones 3D goggles that you wear in your head, basically a very luxury computer with 3D vision. Very expensive also, $3,500, I believe. I would still buy one if the features are phenomenal. So here you see that he looks great. His body fat levels are low. His skin is super, super nice. He's got a 6-pack. I mean, he's physically active. He's doing yoga. I'm not exactly sure. But again, Bryan Johnson, you look crazy for a 45-year-old and also for a 20-year-old. I mean, how many 20-year-olds have this physique? And then we get to the disclaimer, which is a lot shorter, a lot smaller than the big disclaimer that I have to put on every YouTube video. But again, he's hosting all of this information on his own website. And with YouTube, you have to really narrow it down, because otherwise you get demonetized or deplatformed, which is even worse. So here he says this website is provided for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute providing medical advice or professional services. Again, he's providing all of this information for free. He's not your doctor, neither am I your doctor. The information provided should not be used for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease, and those seeking professional medical advice should consult a licensed physician, which is basically the same as my disclaimer. You just have to tell people straight up, don't do what I do unless you're willing to learn, and then you still have to do your own due diligence researching and get with a qualified physician before you even try to do something like this by yourself. Let's just scroll down to how the blueprint actually works. Here is the data of Bryan Johnson after 18 months of adherence. You see various biomarkers with numbers. Unfortunately, the concentrations aren't exactly there, which is very annoying. I remember when I went in for blood work in Holland, you would just get numbers without concentrations or even reference ranges. So Bryan Johnson, you can do better. Put the concentrations there, the ideal reference ranges for guys your age, or maybe a breakdown of the various reference ranges for different age groups, both men and women. And are there reference ranges for whatever is in between men and women? I don't think so. So at least for men and women of different age groups. And otherwise, guys, you know, the concentrations would certainly help, because there's various concentrations, whether that's based on nanomoles or picomoles or nanograms or picograms, right? That's very important for everybody to know. So Bryan Johnson, please include that going forward. Let's start with the LT, an 18, that's units per liter. That's certainly optimal. A body mass index of only 23. I would say that the body mass index isn't exactly an accurate way of tracking your health. I know a lot of the insurance companies use body mass index. So when you're a bodybuilder or you're a little bit more muscular, like Bryan Johnson even is, way more muscular than general population, which is compensating by having his body fat levels low. But if you're a little bit more muscular, a little bit larger and in charger, then the body mass index might be too high, and then your insurance policy is going to say, you're going to pay double, otherwise we're not going to insure you. So, you know, I don't like the body mass index, but again, it's a metric to kind of keep track of what you're doing. Fasting blood glucose levels, 82 nanograms per deciliter. I would say that that's optimal. Below 95, he considers optimal. I see in most people who are physically active and controlling their diet, that fasting blood glucose levels are anywhere between 68 to 80 nanograms per deciliter. So he's certainly close. Body fat levels, let's say 7%, below 10%. I would say that that's optimal, but not realistic for everybody out there. Some people are just a little bit more chunky, especially if you follow a off-season or dieting phase kind of structure. Cholesterol, 158 nanograms per deciliter. That's indeed very, very good. His DHEA is 310. Not exactly sure what the reference range is, but it falls anywhere between 240 to 500, give or take. Not exactly sure what the concentration is. But again, based on the average concentration of most people in the United States or the Western world, a DHEA of 310 is certainly good. Free testosterone index, 0.4, gamma GT 10 units per liter. That's certainly very, very low. So I'm sure he's on top of his caffeine or his carnitine or his glutathione, whether that's oral in form of N-acetylcysteine or reduced oral glutathione or injectable glutathione. These glutathione stores are good. I'm not exactly sure what this concentration is or what the reference range is, but I'll take his word for it. These glutathione stores are representative of a person who's below 30 years old. Grip strength, not exactly sure. There's probably those grippers out there. Strength 1 to 5. I would like to see him close one of them. He probably uses some sort of device. Hemoglobin A1C at 4.5, which is good because his diet is literally all carbs. It's a vegan diet. I'll briefly go over it a little bit later. So even though he's on a hefty dose of carbohydrates every single day, his hemoglobin A1C, the glycolylated hemoglobin found in the red blood cells, is only 4.5%. So I would say that that's quite good. And most of the time, only people who follow a ketogenic diet would get their hemoglobin A1C, let's say 4.5 to 4.7%, which is usually where I hover around that. HDL 73. Very good. Good luck finding that on a steroid user. An HDL of 73 nanograms per deciliter. Sweet. Very impressive. High sensitivity C-reactive protein, 0.2 milligrams per liter. Very low. That's exceptional. Again, I always say that you need to keep it below 0.5, but in the fitness space, using various performance-enhancing drugs and training insane, and maybe doing some other stuff which is not very good for your inflammatory markers, including dietary choices. Most guys would have it between 0.5 to 1 milligram per liter, but Bryan Johnson only 0.2, and that's exceptionally good. All right, good job. IGF-1, 151. Now, people in the bodybuilding space would laugh at that. Right, that's way too low for anabolism, but for anti-aging purposes, generally speaking, it might be better to have your IGF-1 levels a little bit lower. And I believe that he's on a copious amount of metformin. I would expect his IGF-1 levels to be a lot lower, actually, considering the amount of metformin and other medications that he's taking, which are known to lower IGF-1 levels. Some people might see an IGF-1 of only 80, nanograms per milliliter, if I'm not mistaken. So again, quite low, but not exceptionally low to the point it starts messing with your recovery. HDL 74, he's got an HDL to LDL ratio 1:1. That's the best for longevity. Not exactly sure what kind of medications or practices he is following, but we'll figure that out as we keep scrolling. NAD levels, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, whether that's plus P or pH, 22.6. Not exactly sure what that means, but I would say that it's good. PSA is 0.68, so that's a prostate-specific antigen, not including his free prostate-specific antigen, but I would assume, based on his readings, that his inflammation within the prostate, very, very good. Red cell distribution with 11.3%, that's all good. SHBG 68. So now, with his HDL that high, and an SHBG that high, and a DHEA that high, and basically all of the other markers that came beforehand, I would say that Mr. Bryan Johnson is not on performance-enhancing drugs, even though he's admitting to testosterone patches of 2 milligrams a daily use. So maybe those testosterone patches are not suppressive and not altering his hormone panel significantly to the point his HDL, SHBG, and other metabolic markers are getting skewed. Thyroid stimulating hormone, nice and low, 1.94 milli-IUs per milliliter, if I'm not mistaken. So not too much burden on the thyroid gland. Triglycerides, nice and low, 55. Testosterone level, 670. Now again, so that's not 100% natural endogenous testosterone production, but better than mine after using performance-enhancing drugs for over a decade. So 770 nanograms per deciliter, very, very nice. VO2 max we already discussed. White blood cell 4.7, which I will say is a little bit on the low side, and it could be either from some of the practices, the diet, the intensity of his training, or from those testosterone patches, because again, with exogenous testosterone use, you see more often than not that white blood cell count goes down because white blood cells also have androgen receptors, basically the only cell in the bloodstream that has androgen receptors. And, when you look at your total testosterone or free testosterone levels, that's great on paper. It's in the bloodstream, but it doesn't really do anything in the bloodstream. You want that testosterone and the androgen receptor, besides the white blood cells, on skeletal muscle, maybe not on the hair follicle because it might induce hair loss to a certain extent, but you want that testosterone on the androgen receptor in metabolically active tissue. The number you get on paper from your bloodstream, that's just an indication on how the testosterone levels in the peripheral tissue actually are. Let's move over to Blueprint Starter Guide. Pages upon pages where he breaks down the actual cost. I mean, the food cost is $45 per day. The supplement cost is $11.25 per day. I mean, who else does this besides me? I've documented this kind of stuff on the YouTube channel many times. How much do I spend on supplements? How much do I spend on food? How much do I spend on the gym, performance-enhancing drugs? I'll link some of those videos on how much bodybuilding or similar sports actually costs down below. Step 1, the meal prep. Just like I always do, you discuss the nutrition first. But nobody cares about the nutrition nowadays. They scroll right down to the performance-enhancing drugs, which is exactly what we're going to do because he follows a vegan diet, which personally I can't really get into. And there's a lot of carbohydrates in his diet, which again, I prefer a ketogenic diet consisting of meat sources, vegetables, and the occasional fruit here and there, either pre or post workouts, and a nice cheat meal in the weekend because I do have a life and I like to go out with my wife. It rhymes, so it must be true. And, so you can do your own due diligence researching and, following his meal prep. These are not meals that I would eat, but I'm sure there's somebody out there who would benefit from these kinds of meals. So please start reading. Again, otherwise, video way too long. So let's move over to the supplements and discuss and review those. And I really like this setup, right? First, Bryan gives you an insight on how much everything is going to cost. So you know exactly what you're getting yourself into if you're foregoing and not remembering that there was a huge disclaimer, that it was just for informational purposes. Then he discusses the diet, the foundation of everything that's important in the blueprint or life in general, right? You get your diet dialed in first, and then, and only then, do you supplement on top. You figure out which micronutrients you get from your diet, and you supplement accordingly. So again, it's a vegan diet, which can't really get behind because I prefer a ketogenic diet without any significant amount of carbohydrates, purely for cognitive benefits. So I'm not exactly sure why he chose a vegan diet, but he probably thinks or is convinced that meat sources are deleterious for the aging process, which I can completely understand because the food industry nowadays, what you get for your meat or within your meat, full of antibiotics and carcinogens and whatever else. Yeah, I completely relate why he would want to omit that from his diet. Still, for cognitive performance and overall digestion, I would say that a ketogenic diet, if you can, source your ingredients properly and spend an arm and a leg like I am doing right now, I would say that that's better for overall micronutrient intake. But who am I to argue with Mr. Bryan Johnson? So let's discuss the supplements. He breaks it down in upon waking, or Acarbose 200 milligrams, which is a prescription medication to reduce the breakdown of starchy carbohydrates. So based on his diet, Acarbose might be required. Now he's taking Acarbose and a little bit of metformin, which is further down the list. Metformin ER 1500 milligrams, so that's extended release 1500 milligrams with Acarbose 200 milligrams. Bryan, if you're watching this video, I really wonder what your digestion is like. I watched that video with Jesse James West. You have a flat stomach, six-pack, low body fat. You look great, but this much Acarbose and metformin is probably ruining your digestion, or at least based on my personal experience and the experience of many people in the fitness industry who might not have their diet as dialed in as you have. But I would say that at the end of the day, probably the reason why he's sleeping alone, flatulence galore. Again, prove me wrong, Bryan. If you happen to watch this video, I would love to hear from you how good your digestion is taking this much diabetic medications. Ashwagandha, 600 milligrams to kind of reduce cortisol levels and bring his testosterone levels up and help with the stressors of life, because ashwagandha root extract is, of course, an adaptogen. A B complex formula, 25 pills per time, or a quarter pill per time. So if that's a B100 complex, he gets actually a B25 complex. Again, the breakdown isn't there. Brocomex, 250 milligrams. It's a good choice to add in. Vitamin C, 500 milligrams. CA-AKG, not exactly sure what that is, but there's a link to purchase it. And again, Bryan Johnson, even though he's retired, for some of these products, he has links to Amazon or some of the websites. So Bryan Johnson, the entrepreneurial ship has not left you yet. You prefer kickback just like I prefer kickback. And why not? If you're doing all this work and spending all of this money to document your journey, which is costing way more than the kickback you're getting, you might as well reduce the cost a little bit by providing those Amazon links. Cacao flavonols, probably for antioxidant benefits. Vitamin D3, 2000 IU, not too crazy. DHEA, 25 milligrams. Okay, so now we're supplementing with neurosteroids already, which is always what I try to emphasize to you guys. Supplement your DHEA in, and whether that's 25 milligrams per day or 50 milligrams per day, do your blood work, see how bad or how low or how high your DHEA sulfate levels are, and then supplement accordingly. And let's figure out if he takes 2 servings per day or just 1 serving upon waking. Vitamin E, 670 milligrams. How many IUs is that? 200 IUs? Could be mistaken there, and it depends on the form of vitamin E, but it's at least 100, maybe 200 IUs, which I think is beneficial for antioxidant and blood viscosity benefits. Fish oil, EPA, 500 milligrams with vitamin E, 5 milligrams, so he's actually getting 72 milligrams vitamin E, so slightly higher IU count. Garlic extract, 2.4 equivalent, and then another 1.2 from Keolic garlic. So I wonder what he smells like. I do know people that are very hefty on the garlic, and again, it has a ton of health benefits, but based on his diet and his garlic intake, and I also see that he's taking turmeric, Yeah, he might smell a little bit pungent. You know what? If I ever meet Bryan Johnson myself, I'll be the first one to take a sniff and let you guys know how he smells. Maybe he smells like a garden of flowers, but based on his supplementation protocol, I don't know. I hope you smell good, Bryan, because you certainly look good. So you need to match both of them if you want to remain in the market. Ginger root, 2.2 grams, probably for antioxidant benefits or for digestive health. Glucosamine for connective tissue health, and iodine for overall metabolic function. As you can see from his thyroid-stimulating hormone, his iodine intake and probably his selenium intake is more than adequate for accurate thyroid function. Not sure if this is coming from regular table salt, but he's supplementing probably because he's not getting enough iodine in his diet. Was he taking kelp? I'm not exactly sure. We kind of glanced over the diet, right? Lithium, maybe to take the edge off. Lycopene, another vitamin A version. He could also eat more carrots, but, we'll take it as it comes along. Lysine, 1 gram. Again, the metformin we already discussed. Nicotinamide riboside, 375 milligrams, 6 days a week. Again, that's just with breakfast. I prefer nicotinamide mononucleotide, but not as much as I prefer nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide plus IV administrations once per week. I felt a better result from NMN over NR. But everybody's different, and maybe you got a better kickback promoting NR. No, it's just an Amazon link. So I think that he really likes the NR versus NMN based on the scientific research that he's done. And maybe Bryan Johnson got better results from NR regarding energy levels and overall enzymatic reactions in the body compared to NMN supplementation. N-acetyl L-cysteine, NAC, 1,800 milligrams upon waking. So I don't see any oral reduced glutathione. I'm not exactly sure if he's IVing NAD plus or glutathione, but maybe we'll figure it out a little bit later. But at least this amount of NAC is certainly enough to raise your glutathione stores. I'm surprised to see no 400 milligrams SAM-E with this amount of NAC to increase the glutathione stores within your liver. Maybe he takes a SAM-E before bed. Proferrin, not exactly sure what that is. 10 milligrams, is that an iron supplement? Perhaps. Turmeric with piperine, 1 gram. So it's not curcumin phytosomes to reduce your inflammation. Maybe the turmeric supplement that he means is to reduce inflammation, but it could also be, that turmeric is there to reduce the flatulence. 1 gram to 10 grams turmeric per day, even though it makes you a little bit smelly, then the body odor certainly changes. It also reduces flatulence quite effectively, right? Maybe that's the reason why it's there. Taurine, 1 gram. And I like this guy even more. Taurine, 1 gram with breakfast to help with osmotic pressure and the regulation of the extracellular and intercellular fluid balance. Ubiquinol, 100 milligrams, freaking great. Zeaxanthin, 20 milligrams lutein, 4 milligrams zeaxanthin, another form of the vitamin A for overall health. And zinc, 15 milligrams. There's a ton of different benefits related to zinc. I'm not going to list all of them, but long story short, helps with androgen receptor sensitivity, helps with testosterone production, helps with keeping that testosterone, preventing the conversion of testosterone into estradiol by acting as an aromatase inhibitor to a certain extent, and with the hair health and the immune system, and the list goes on. So this is just with breakfast. I'm missing magnesium, but maybe he takes that with dinner. I'm missing selenium, but maybe he's getting that from other sources. Again, a vegan diet is not that high in selenium, unless you're taking a couple Brazil nuts, which again, depending on the soil, might not contain that much selenium, or, at least 90 micrograms of selenium. We glanced over the diet, so my sincere apologies if there's a couple Brazil nuts here or there. The supplements he takes with dinner are carbos, 200 milligrams, yet again. Brocomex, again. Vitamin C, again. Cocoflavonoids, EPA, garlic, glucosamine, hyaluronic acid, 300 milligrams. So that's a new addition before bed. Again, helps with the skin quality and texture. I would take a little bit more. Hyaluronic acid for connective tissue and skin health, but maybe he only needs 300 milligrams because his enzymatic reactions in the body are so flawless. Lysine, 1 gram. Tyrosine, 500 milligrams. That's surprising. So he's increasing in dopamine levels in the evening, not before bed. I would like to know the reasoning before that. Most of us take L-tyrosine upon waking or before activity that requires your dopamine levels to be a little bit higher. Again, L-tyrosine is found in most nootropic formulas, including Gorilla Respawn, hands down the best nootropic formula on the market right now. Nobel pricing. Derek, phenomenal job. Good work. I take it every day, including before this recording. Metformin, again, only 500 milligrams. Man, I would like to see 1,500 milligrams metformin before bed if you're taking 2,000 milligrams, and then only 500 milligrams upon waking to kind of prevent gastrointestinal upset. Another 1,800 milligrams NAC. Most of us take 2,000 milligrams per day, but maybe Bryan Johnson is onto something because, again, his skin looks super, super nice, and that's because of this elevated glutathione stores. More nicotinamide ribocytes. Maybe that's keeping him awake. From my personal experience, NMN or NR supplementation shouldn't be taken too late because it does give you a little bit of energy. And then another 1 gram of turmeric, probably with pepperine, just like with breakfast. He takes before bed 0.3 milligrams or 300 micrograms melatonin. So that's a very, very low dose. So there's no mention of glycine, no mention of 5-HTP, no mention of GABA or phenibut, like we discussed in the Deep Sleep Deep Dive video discussing the supplements. He only takes a little bit of melatonin, probably just to help him fall asleep, but his entire sleep hygiene protocol is very, very extensive, right? He sleeps alone, blinder curtains, a couple things to block out the noise and the sunlight further. And again, I documented some of those kind of practices in the Deep Sleep Deep Dive discussing the products and tools, which should already be online. Now, besides all of these supplements, and this literally, like if you were to put all of these supplements in your hands, one hand would not cut it. You would need a bowl. Cup your hands in a bowl, and this is how many supplements he takes, right? So he's swallowing multiple supplements, just like I take multiple supplements throughout the day. I take a handful upon waking, then I take a couple different supplements with each meal. So if you eat 5 meals per day, that's a handful with meal 1, a handful with meal 5, and then meal 2, 3, and 4. Man, that's another 8 supplements that I take. Yeah, you know, for all of these benefits, you turn into a little bit of a crazy maniac when it comes to supplementation. Then the other things that he takes, extra virgin olive oil should have been included with the diet. Pea protein, 30 grams per day. Dark chocolate, 15 grams. Again, I think it's all included in the diet. Ooh, rapamycin, 13 milligrams biweekly. I wonder if he takes that in a fasted state to kind of shut off mTOR and induce a little bit of autophagy. That's a lot of rapamycin. Yeah, I would like to know why he takes that much. Most of us, or most people, I never took rapamycin. It feels a little too extreme. And again, I like to my mTOR to be shut down, but only for a week and not that much shut down because I do like my mTOR for protein synthesis and overall, you know, fitness aspirations. So I would like to know his reasoning why he's taking that much rapamycin. But again, you know, the anti-aging community, they really like their rapamycin. Growth hormone, 0.6 milligrams 5 times per week. So that's 2 IUs. Growth hormone per day. So now we're getting into the exciting bits. He's already on DHEA and also on growth hormone. Bioidentical hormones that are not deleterious for your health, assuming you keep the dose low, like Bryan Johnson is keeping the dose low. 17 alpha estradiol, 4 milligrams per week, transdermal. And testosterone, 2 milligrams patches, 6 times per week. Now I'm wondering, again, he didn't document his luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone levels, or you know, gonadotropin hormone releasing hormone levels, which are, you know, hard to detect in most places where you do blood work. But his LH and FSH levels were not determined. So does he get 700, 800 nanograms per deciliter from the testosterone patches and favorable estradiol levels from you know, the transdermal things that he takes, or is he just supplementing on top of his natural endogenously produced testosterone converting into estradiol? Again, his SHBG was quite high, so I don't think his exogenous testosterone is suppressing these metabolic markers that much. His HDL was quite high. That could be from the transdermal estradiol that he's taken. And I would like to see more blood work from you, Bryan. Really, I'm fascinated by this, right? Most of us, we don't really like transdermal stuff. We prefer either sublingual or intramuscular or subcutaneous testosterone administrations. But I would like to see a little bit more metabolic markers and sex hormones and neurosteroids from Bryan. But, you know, I completely understand why he doesn't want to document everything because, you know, the more you document, the more people will hold it against you. As I'm well aware, guys, I'm well aware. Let's see, vitamin B12 1 time a week. Is that an injection? Probably, right? Maybe 100 micrograms per 1 milliliter. So that's probably the only injection he's doing besides the growth hormone administrations and maybe the NAD plus and glutathione IV administrations that we didn't hear about. Step 3, track progress. That's right. Diet first, then the supplementation, and then the blood work parameters. Now, you guys are all familiar, cystatin C. We didn't see that in the results, but I'm sure it's nice and low. Complete blood count, blood urea nitrogen, creatinine, hemoglobin A1C, IGF-1, venous glucose levels. So he checks his fasting blood glucose levels by doing blood work, right? Drawing it from the artery right here, not pricking his finger with a glucometer and checking it that way, which are a little bit more inaccurate compared to actual blood work results. Lipid panel, right? That's the total cholesterol, the HDL, the LDL, the triglycerides, and perhaps the ApoE and B 1 and 2, and the lipoprotein level A levels. Albumin, liver panel, thyroid panel, high sensitivity C-reactive protein. There's a ton more markers he can check, but you don't have to check them so frequently. So I'm sure he's checking his serum electrolytes, his cancer markers, some of the other small markers like, heavy metal markers, for example. Right? There's so many more markers that he can check. I see that he checks his vitamin A levels, vitamin B levels, and a couple of the other micronutrients. Very, very important. I've never seen anybody check their serum glutathione levels, which he's doing. So again, very, very interesting. He's doing his DHA sulfate, testosterone total free and bioavailable properly, estrogen levels, so that's estrone, estradiol, and estriol, if he's being that thorough. Sexual binding globulin, and then of his urinalysis, probably just like I always do my urinalysis, his iodine levels, iodine to creatinine ratio, never heard of that. Interesting, I'll look into it. Thanks for the tip, Brian. And albumin to creatinine ratio. You can also check your cystatin C levels, comparing urine to your bloodstream, and then get your glomerular filtration rate nicely dialed in. But I'm sure in his case, that's all sweet. All right, now we're actually getting into Bryan Johnson's The Blueprint, discussing all of the results in the imaging and, some of the other parameters that he's doing so actively to keep his age suppressed. There's a lot of details here, and I don't think I'll be able to cover all of it. So I would highly implore you to go to this website and do a little bit of reading and scrolling. There's a lot of scrolling to be done if you really want to dive into it. But again, it's fascinating information. And I think that everybody can learn from this. So the blueprint, as a glance, the basics, he's 45 years old. The biological age is 42.5. So he took 3 years off. So that's not exactly being, a 10-year-old, but maybe based on different parameters, he identifies or can relate to a 10-year-old. Pace of aging is 0.69. So he's compared to an aging of 1, right? That's 1 year, 1 year per year. He's aging 0.69 years per year. So he's reduced the pace of aging. He's 171 pounds, 7% body fat, 4.3% bone mass, 60.2% body water, with a body mass index of lower than what he documented earlier. Now, again, sometimes there's a little bit of discrepancy. There's a huge document where, sometimes you forget to update something. I'm the same way. I'm guilty of the same faults. Sometimes there's so much information that you forget to make the proper updates globally, right? So don't be hard on him. Again, he's documenting and doing the best way he can. 2,000 calories per day, vegan, except for collagen peptides. Okay, so whoop-de-doo is getting a little bit of collagen type 1 and 3 from bovine hide. Again, that's hydrolyzed skin from beef to get your collagen in. And maybe it gets collagen type 2 from the connective tissue of chicken feet. That's where collagen type 2 comes from. He gets 1 to 18 hours of daily fasting in. So so his breakfast and dinner is probably very, very close together. And, it's just a normal intermittent fasting window of 16 to 18 hours, including sleep. 70 pounds of veggies per month. Man, that's a lot. I think the last time I ate that many veggies was when I was doing a fasting mimicking diet to resolve the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And surprisingly, I didn't go through so much toilet paper because it's a lot of fiber. And his diet consists of 19% protein, 33% carbs, and 48% fat. So, okay, so I was mistaken. He doesn't eat so many carbohydrates. It's majority fat. Maybe we should glance over that vegan diet yet again. But again, this video will be super, super long, and most of you guys don't even have that attention span. So look into the diet to see where all this fat is coming from. Maybe all this carbose and metformin actually makes sense. What the blueprint is: scientifically rigorous, not vigorous, unfortunately, but rigorous nonetheless. Data and evidence-based versus opinion and facts-based. So all of my opinions reviewing this blueprint completely out the water, unfortunately, even though I'm evidence-based here and there. But I'm also experience-based, and, well, I've been doing this for a lot longer than you have, Brian. I've been doing this since 15 years old, but not with the financial backing you have, unfortunately. But maybe, you never know, maybe Bitcoin will go to the moon and we'll spend $2 million per year to do the exact same thing, and then meet you one-on-one with the exact same information. Caloric restriction with athletic ability, longevity without a magic pill. Well, you're on nicotinamide riboside, buddy. And that is certainly a magic pill when it comes to anti-aging. And you can do a lot more for longevity if you look into the magic pills, because there are many of them. Vegan with muscle definition. Okay, that's rare. Yeah, I'll give you that. A systemic way of being. Yes, it's very systemic, this blueprint. Yeah, I love it. All right, so healthy chocolates. We'll glance over that. Let's go to the current results. Again, the results which we just discussed, so we can scroll down a little bit further. Those are the blood work results. Then, younger than your chronological age. A couple things that he measures for tangible results. There's a whole list here. So again, I implore you to read that through the blueprint yourself. A lot of things that he's tracking. Again, but this video will be way too long. A lot of rejuvenation points. Again, I recognize most of them, but a lot to discuss. Wow. It's fascinating to me. DEXA scans, grip strength, spinal cord flexibility. This is probably where all the 100 markers are coming from. B vitamins, all of his micronutrients and metabolic markers. It's all documented here. Great. Now, I would love to get this guy, separately without cameras, and then discuss what's really going on over the enjoyment of a cigar and whiskey. But I guess he's too extreme to enjoy a cigar or whiskey. But if we ever meet, dude, I will treat you to the best cigar and, maybe not the best whiskey, because those are really expensive, but a very good whiskey nonetheless. Yeah, then I want to discuss everything that you're doing off camera, because I know you can only document 99%, because otherwise the general population will really raise their eyebrows. Routine measurement of his weight, body fat distribution, muscle mass, body water, body mass index, sleep, his heart rate variability, the deep sleep, REM sleep, respiratory rate, body temperature. I guess he has all of this equipment at home, so he can kind of document and keep track of what is happening while he's sleeping. Hopefully he's got staff for that, because this is so much tracking of what's going on in your body that it's probably a full-time job if you were to do it yourself. And I'm sure he's financially secure enough to hire a couple staff to do all of the interpretation for him. Waking body temperature in the air, which I also advocate in various articles and several videos on my YouTube channel. SpO2 while sleeping, which I also documented on how to track your blood oxygen levels if you suffer from sleep apnea, but it's good to do nonetheless. You have various devices for that, which I would expect an Amazon link here, but it's not there. Brian, you can find these things on Amazon. Put the link, please. Blood glucose multiple times per day, probably. MRI, whole body. Man, that's like 2 hours in the machine, or maybe even longer. So it's good that you're retired, because, man, I hated being in the MRI, and I only done it once. Ultrasound of the whole body. Usually most guys would just do their abdomen, maybe their nipples if they have gyno, or the thyroid gland, or yes, the testicles also. If you care about your testicular health, I've done 2 nows, and I can't really recommend it for enjoyable purposes, but you have to get it done to see what your testicular health is if you're thinking about having kids. Brian has 3, so I guess he doesn't need to do any more. And maybe his HPTA function is a little bit shut down with his testosterone estradiol patches. Still, would be good to do just to ensure that testicular health is sustained. That's one more organ that you can take care of. Biofluids, blood, stool, urine, and saliva. Well, what about the semen? All right, we can check that too. I do it every month. But again, he has 3 kids, so no need to go ham there. Physical fitness, Whoop, and Polar Watch. Again, Whoop must be some sort of application or tracker that I'm not familiar with. His VO2 max, his hearing, his eyes, and the air quality. Let's see, I believe that he goes into details about climate control within his house, which I highly believe in. I documented this or discussed this in the Deep Sleep Deep Dive Part 3 video where I discussed various products, tools, and devices to improve your overall sleep quality. I'm sure he's got climate control, a humidifier, an air purifier, basically his entire house with the financial backing that he has a prime, pristine air quality. I'm sure of it. I would like to do the same living here in Thailand where the air quality is a little bit wishy-washy, but I don't have the financial backing just quite yet. He checks his vein health using an ultrasound, his whole body MRI for cancer screening. So besides the cancer markers that you can check once in a while through blood work analysis, he's also doing an MRI on all of his organs to assess if there's any cancer present or, in the early stages of development. I wonder if he has an MRI machine at home. Those things are thousands of dollars. When I say thousands, it's like close to 100,000, if not close to $1 million. Those things are mad expensive. Let's see, nervous system measurement. I'm not exactly sure how he does that. I'm not exactly familiar with these kinds of plantar 2-point discrimination, but we'll take his word for it. Kidney ultrasound, 0 cysts, 0 parenchymal thickness. Abnormalities, you won't see that on bodybuilders. There's always some sort of parenchymal thickness or echocinicity. Let's see, a thyroid gland he's tested, his prostate he's tested, blood glucose levels again, max heart rate tested with probably some sort of elliptical or another machine to kind of test that while doing his VO2 max at the same time. Waist circumference, probably the cheapest measurement he's taking. You just take, measuring tape and you measure that. 83 centimeters. Average of 83 centimeters? All right, not bad, not bad. And body fat levels, right? He's checking his pulse wave velocity. Not exactly sure what he's using for that, and his blood urea nitrogen. Okay, a lot of measurements and a lot of data to go over. And if I seem a little bit unprepared, that's because I'm not familiar with 100% of the things that he's doing. So I'm learning a lot as we go along. All right, and here he documents his heart health. Is determined with an MRI ultrasound, not an electrocardiogram, because again, that's a little bit too rudimentary if you are that on top of your health. Various numbers, I'm going to be honest, I'm not exactly sure what all of them mean, but his resting heart rate is only 44 beats per minute, which is considered clinical bradycardia. I have the exact same resting heart rate, but only if I take a beta blocker, nebivolol. So now my resting heart rate without an nebivolol is about, let's say, 52 beats per minute. Again, daily fasted cardio on top of my health supplements and reasonably physically active. Still, his heart rate is a lot lower, probably also because his body weight is lower. All right, so I just went through some of the data here, and I can't really decipher all of it. What I do see is that there's no plaque or arteriosclerosis within the heart, so that's good. But some of these measurements I'm not exactly familiar with or know how to interpret them without seeing the reference ranges. Again, I'm not a cardiologist, guys. I'm just a guy that talks about his performance-enhancing drug journey here on YouTube. And even though I've done, an MRI and a CT scan myself and plenty of ultrasound on my heart, it's not something that I'm specialized in or should actually be talking about in the context of heart health. So based on what I see and what I can interpret, it looks that his heart is in a good state of health. But I'm sure there's more to decipher. I'm sure a cardiologist will pop up in the comment section and starts talking about the actual shape and the actual state of health of Bryan Johnson's heart. He has a big heart though, because he's documenting everything for free for our enjoyment. So more points for Bryan. Moving over to the brain health with a couple different metrics. I'm not exactly sure what they mean. He's kind of assessing the health of particular regions or particular measurements, comparing that to his biological age or his chronological age. So some things are younger than he actually is. Some things are slightly older, like the ventricular volume, age 48. So he's 45, 46 years old, or maybe he was even younger when he did these measurements. So besides that, everything else is pretty much the same or of a lower age. So he's, all things considering, the average age of his brain is lower than the chronological age of Bryan Johnson. And he does the same thing for his lung health or his gastrointestinal health or his hair health, right? The health of his skin is documented here. The health of his eyes as well, the ear health, the oral health, right? Oral health and oral hygiene, very, very important, right? Whether you're receiving or giving, guys, oral health is the way to cleanliness is godliness. Let's just leave it at that. Sleep health. This is fascinating to me because, again, all of us, going over the deep sleep, deep dive video series, all of us need perfect sleep health or sleep hygiene. So what he does is he's sleeping in a blacked out room, same bedtime every single day. I'm thinking that he's sleeping according to her circadian rhythm. Let's say he's going to bed around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the evening, and then sleeps 8 to 9 hours or maybe 6 to 7 hours because, depending on his physical activity levels. And then waking up as the sun is coming up. So, let's see, sleep alone kind of makes me sad, hearing that. But I understand, if you're sleeping in a bed with somebody else and they're snoring or turning, tossing and turning, or you have some pets that wakes you up, right? The tossing and turning doesn't really bother me, but the pets sometimes. I have 6 cats, guys. Yes, 6 cats. My life is amazing. I got a beautiful partner and 6 cats. What more do you want? Oh, a couple kids. Eh? They're on the way. Trust me, we're practicing every single day. Well, close to every single day. So, these things can kind of interfere with your sleep. So he's sleeping alone. Just make me a little bit sad, though. I guess he's divorced, or maybe his wife died. He has 3 kids. I'm not exactly sure what the story is. I didn't really fully read the Wikipedia page, but yeah, sleeping alone sounds a little bit sad, but I completely understand why he wants to do that for the context of longevity purposes. Blue light blocking glasses, probably later points during the day, and otherwise, he might go outside and does a little bit of reading and just avoids the blue light coming from the electronics in the house. 1 hour downtime before bed, just like I mentioned, and temperature-controlled mattress. Man, those are expensive also. I mentioned that in part 3 of the Deep Sleep Deep Dive video series as well. Organs to complete measurements for. Okay, so he's not done yet. He's got a to-do list here. The thymus, he still needs to check, which I believe it kind of reverses or shrinks in size with age. And then as you age, it might actually disappear completely. So maybe by the age of 40, 45 years old, there's no thymus left to measure. The liver and gallbladder, again, maybe talking about a fibroscan here, the pancreas, bone marrow, retina, stomach, esophagus, large bowels. So those endoscopy is on his to-do list. I don't wish that on anybody because it's highly uncomfortable. But still, if you want to do it, then you're going to have to do it. Mesentery, trachea, larynx, pharynx, lips. I'm not sure how you can measure that, but, usually your partner goes well with that. You're a beautiful, great kisser. Bronchioles, lymphatics, in the lymphatic system, lymphatics, the spleen, ureterus, bladder, urethra, middle ear, nose, tongue, penoscrotal, yes, interesting. Cartilage, ligaments, motor and sensory nerve, and spinal cords. Okay, and he's done his full sexual health panel. So urine chlamydia, urine gonorrhea, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. Oh, this is on the to-do list. This is on the to-do list. But assuming that he has 3 healthy kids, at least by the time they were born, he probably did something similar, which is just, as an adult is very responsible to do because, when you're giving a new life, you should at least check these sexually transmitted diseases. I did them when I got into a relationship with my wife, and we'll do them again when we're ready to start conceiving because these kinds of diseases are terrible for the health of your child. So he probably did this a couple of years ago. I'm not exactly sure what happened to the wife or the partner he had at that time. But again, if he's sleeping alone, he probably doesn't need to check this, but it would be good to do nonetheless. So chlamydia, gonorrhea, hepatitis C, B, herpes, all the kinds, HIV, all the kinds, syphilis, and Gardasil 9 HPV. Oh, yes, the vaccine for that. So, yeah, a lot of testing that he still needs to do, but it's safe to say that he's done more testing than most people out there. A little bit of, a little breakdown of his diet and supplements, which we don't need to get into, besides that he's taking 54 pills per day. Craziness. Oh, and the third dish, 34. So he's taking 100 pills per day, right? What he mentions right here. So I think this is pretty much it. Oh, there's fitness things. Again, read that by yourself, right? We're mostly interested in the other stuff. And for the most people that are watching this YouTube channel, we're probably more extreme, more vigorous than what Bryan Johnson is doing. And perhaps also inducing a ton of oxidative stress and ligament issues and muscle tears potentially. So if you're interested in fitness for longevity purposes, please read the blueprint, scroll all the way down. What else is there to go over? Oh, a couple pictures where he looks very, very good. You know what, guys? I think we'll leave it here. This video is probably already way too long. A ton of editing that I need to do. So if you would like me to review more of this, let me know down below in the comment section. Personally, I would rather meet Bryan Johnson myself. I'm going to pitch it to Jesse James West to get me an in. Again, watch this video first. Let's see if he even wants to meet me after this one. Because I'm crazy, maybe even more crazy than Bryan Johnson is regarding all of this, tracking of various parameters. And maybe he doesn't even want to meet me after this. Who knows, right? But I would love to meet you, Bryan. I'll bring my cigars and whiskey for you. You can look at them while I'm connoisseuring right in front of you, because it's probably not on your to-do list. Probably too much oxidative stress and, negative effects on your health. I find you fascinating. I think this is great. I don't feel alone in my aspirations of documenting this online and sharing this for the world to see. I'm sure you get your, your negative feedback here and there, because the general population completely doesn't understand why you're doing this, or why I'm doing this, or why Ben Greenfield is doing this. But you're not alone. I'm not alone in this. I think it's great, right, to document all of this and spend this much money and being so nuanced and in depth in your reporting process. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for doing this. I think it's fascinating. I think it's great. I think there should be more guys like you, but again, not everybody is this crazy. Let's leave it here, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find everything that I'm associated with down below in the YouTube description section. My sponsors and affiliates, they're all there. And otherwise, they're on my website at vigoroussteve.com. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at vigorsteve. Vigorous crew, you guys know what to do. A front double bicep for you guys. At least I think in a front double bicep I got Bryan Johnson, but everywhere else regarding the tracking of health parameters, I'm falling short. I know this, but I'm going to do better. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.